Hey viewers, welcome to a review of last week's battle 19 of Season 6 between Orks, Tyranids, Legion of the Damned, Mechanicus and just about everybody. This is inside the webway at this stage, and I've just done the deployment, and at this stage we've got everything on the board for the Mechanicus, basically a lot of tanks which has been brought through into the webway via a mining rig, whatever they're called, can't remember. Basically came through there as an insurance policy for the Eldar, who did an alliance with Inquisitor Yars, who made a return, who's sitting up the front there. Heroic return, burst through onto the battle scene to try and reinforce the Eldar as they try and get the Star of Mystaria active. But meanwhile, Orks have invaded the webway, and I'm going to title this battle Blockage in the Webway. I'm going to try and build some of my trademark Ork humour into it, or lack of humour, but anyway, I'll give it a go. So the idea here is the Ork riding a mind controlling a Tyranid has not only brought his pirate ship full of Ork badness, but is also mind controlling all this Tyranid activity over here. And basically in response, the Mechanicus have come out ready to fire upon the attackers. Now this battle is going to be a little bit different, I think. I haven't quite worked it all out yet, but might have up to 8 turns, which is a little bit unusual, because pretty much everything else is in deep strike or in reserve. We've got Tyranids over here, still can't come out yet. This is purely really because they can't get onto the board. We've got Legion of the Damned, who aren't even on the board at this stage. I'm going to build them in as part of the storyline. They're going to teleport onto the board at a moment of need, possibly in turn 2, something like that, maybe turn 3. We've got Blatz, our musical hero there. We've got his little outhouse over here, which is used for various hijinks during the game. And we've got some more Legion of the Damned up here ready to come out, and we've got a big Gargant over here who's going to make an appearance at some stage. So over the course of the battle, maybe turn 2 or 3, the others will come out onto the board, which will get very cluttered very quickly. So hopefully some of these tanks can blast their way through some of the advancing horde. Meanwhile, the Eldar will continue to try and resurrect their fallen Titan, who's buried in the webway there. So that is the deployment initially. It's going to be a bit unusual, this battle, but we'll see how it goes. We've got turn 1 coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of the first half of turn 1. The first turn went to the Astra Militarum and the Mechanicus here in the first turn. We've got our only troop units here being the Tech Priests with Yars, the Inquisitor. They basically were back here next to this, we'll call it a drop pod, or basically coming out of this section here. Came out here and just only really were trying to get to this bit of cover here, nice bit of hard cover there, so they can put up with all the fire coming from the other side there, but that's where they got to, and they really couldn't do anything. The rest of the units pretty much fell into place. We've got a Stormlord here backing up the first Stormlord in case that kind of gets blown up. These 2 units here fired upon the pirate ship there, and actually these other 2 did as well. That was the only firing for the turn. The pirate ship, I mean, I don't know why you bring one of those things that take up half the board, and just a huge big magnet for fire. This thing's basically on turn 1 damaged quite considerably, and really I suppose it takes the pressure away from the Hierophant over the corner here, who can do its own damage. There's going to be a lot of explosions in this battle, and quite a few hit that pirate ship in the first turn, so we'll see what it can do in response. Not a lot of firing, and don't forget we've got a whole heap in reserve up here and over there, all around the board. So we'll see how it goes. Second half of turn 1, coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of turn 1 now. The Orks and Tyranids have had their turn. No surprises which direction they're going. They're moving left of board, trying to get as close as they possibly can to all these tanks up here. At this stage we've had one casualty. Let's work around the board first. We had the big pirate ship, which is all in flames at this stage basically after getting fired upon by all that, and it basically hit with a nasty big round on the Stormlord there from the giant cannon at the front. Then everyone else scattered around at the Orks, basically snuck round behind their main flagship, I suppose, and they didn't really do anything. They're not within range or anything like that. Just remember, this is an extended game, so even though these units are right in the corner of the board, they'll get involved in later stages, I would expect. We had the Red Terror jump out and try and assault the Mechanicus tank here, and leaving a nasty big scratch down the side of it with those claws. We also had Carnifexes, etc., meander their way through all these this Tyranid terrain, trying to use it as cover to get as close as they can. You'll notice that there's a lot of monstrous creatures in this battle, not a lot of infantry type units. There's lots more monstrous creatures to come, hence the title of the battle, Titanic blockage in the webway. Anyway, we had our Hierophant, which was in the corner, come up here and finish off the Stormlord just by firing on it there. So it's only turn 1 and we've had one casualty, one tank, so they'll go down pretty quick, I'd imagine, if some melee units get into range. But again, there's a lot in Deep Strike yet to come, so I'll have to see how that pans out. Alright, turn 2 coming up shortly. Here we are after the first half of turn 2, and there's a noticeable absence from the board. The alliance of the Imperium, the Mechanicus, have all fired 1, 2, 3, 4, and the Imperial Knight there to take out the pirate ship. So it took 2 turns of focused fire to bring it down, but it's a huge target. It's made out of Ork junk, so it's never going to last too long, but it is taken out, so it leaves a huge big hole in the board. And now look, we've got these major tanks here, but we've still got the Hierophant, and then we move into the next phase, which is going to bring out Gargant and Squiggoth and a whole heap of other stuff. So we've got the Legion of the Damned to come out, so it might look like a big victory for the Alliance, but it's early days yet. So that's the end of first half of turn 2. Here we are at the end of turn 2 now, and the Tyranid and Ork Alliance have flooded the board with reinforcements. Looking at the board at the moment, let's start over with the Tyranids. We had a bunch of warriors, Hive Tyrant, Dimericon, not sure of the pronunciation, coming onto the board. We've got our Hierophant who's just charging across the board, sat there and zapped the other Stormlord. Then we also had Exocrine and another blade, what are they called? Blade guys, it'll come to me. Can't remember. Anyway, it's like a Hive Tyrant variant with the bone swords. Over this side we've got the Orks, basically just enjoyed the look, it looks like they're way ahead as far as numbers go, but this is a bit of a different type of battle, so it's a little bit early to call it. But the Orks are just enjoying themselves here, charging across the board. We had Blatz make a return. I don't know if anyone's following the series, but Blatz makes an appearance every now and again. I'll try and get that to focus. And I'm going to somehow build in his outhouse into this battle. But he's come across here, they fired and tried to have a go at the Baneblade there, which was assaulted by some Tyranids there as well. No doubt they'll do some more damage later. We had a few Horridor and a Hive Crone come in from the back as well, so huge amount of support for the Orks and Tyranids. And don't forget, we've got a Gargant sitting over there ready to come on, and I've got a Hive Tyrant still left, and we've still got a whole bunch of Gene Stealers. But also we had a Lictor come out of that little crevice there, just take a position within assault range there next time. Also there's another Lictor that came out this side. I busted his arm off too. I was dragging him out, I have to take him out and glue him together again. So he's out there ready to jump on some poor unsuspecting soul, and it looks really bleak at the moment for the Alliance with Yars and the Tech Priests. We've got one Imperial Knight that's now blown up. We've still got our Ululator, which hasn't been touched really yet, and that's going to be the saviour there to try and zap the Hierophant and maybe the Gargantuan Squiggoth. We've got this other vehicle which is covered with nasty looking weaponry, but you've got these Carnifexes. It's been hacked on multiple times by the Red Terror here, but obviously the armour's a little bit too thick for it to cause any major damage. So there's some major firepower here, but it's only 2, and there's a sea of bad guys just there. But next turn, we'll have to see, we have a whole bunch of Terminators and things to come out for the Legion of the Damned. There's tanks, heaps of Marines, and we've got some las cannon kits there as well. So is it enough? Looks like heavily outnumbered at the moment, but once the Legion of the Damned, can they save the day? Turn 3 coming up shortly. Season 6, Battle 19, first half of turn 3, blockage in the webway. And that's what we've got here at the moment. We're in the webway, and this is a blockage. We have all units, not all units on board. We've still got a bunch in Deep Strike. I'll get to that in a minute. We had the Legion of the Damned turn up here unannounced and managed to reinforce the ailing Mechanicus lines. Over here we had the Imperial Knight turn and fire at the Lictor, who poked its head out of this cave here. Can't have a Lictor ambushing the lines from behind, so took the Imperial Knight to do that. We had some Legion of the Damned walk onto the board. A few here, a few tanks, a few rhinos. We had one with las cannons here turn around and take out the Red Terror. We also had these 2, the Baneblade and the other large Mechanicus tank, take out these what are they? Not the Terragast. Starts with T. The one that spews termagants. Can't remember the name. Anyway, that, and I've just lost the plot here at the moment. Forgotten the names of these 2 guys, but they've basically been evaporated by these 2 tanks here. Our Ululator here fired again at the Hierophant, who's taken some nasty blows, but still kicking along. And hopefully they can take that out. Otherwise, it's game over if it gets up close and starts ripping into these masses here. Likewise for the Orks and Tyranid side, they've got to really take out this Ululator here, because they're not always easy to take out themselves. Up this side we had the Yars and the Tech Priest retinue come and take out a Lictor, because we had some Terminators for the Legion of the Damned appear here, fire down upon that group of Orks there. So that kind of secures that area somewhat for Mechanicus side, and that's really about it. There's a few casualties here and there. We've still got deep striking. We've got 1 unit of Marines for the Legion of the Damned. There's another one there. We've got all this, which is Terminators, some HQ units. There's a Dreadnought there. There's another Rhino to come on with a squad inside it, and there's another group down there. I think they're actually in a tank somewhere on the board. But for the other side, we've got a bunch of Gene Stealers, we've got a Hive Tyrant with wings ready to come on board, And don't forget our big can over here, who's going to cause some mayhem later in the game. So as I said before, this game should go for around 8 turns, and no doubt there'll be some bloodshed in between. So that is the end of the first half of turn 3. Here we are at the end of turn 3, and at the moment we've got all the Tyranid and Ork army components out on the field except for the Gargant over there. So Gargant's taking its time. It's at the end of turn 3. So what we saw here is the Warriors and Hive Tyrant, Exocrine, they basically came up behind the Hierophant who's leading the charge here. It's taken a bunch of wounds, but it's leading the charge. We had Dimericon and the Swarm Lord there come up through this tree section here, watching as the Carnifex brood take on this giant Mechanicus tank, doing some damage to the front wheel section there, and not taking it out, but really causing a threat there and damaging it substantially. So we've got the some psychic attack here by Zoanthrope, an old style Zoanthrope guy there. Zapped the tank, no effect really. Okay, so over here we saw the boys, Ork boys, they got in the way really. They're just clogging up the system. Gargantuan Squiggoth charged up this way looking to get those tusks in amongst that heavy armour up there, but these boys just get in the way. They had nowhere to go, so he stepped back there and fired his big tank, anti-tank weapon, and then we had a bit of a storyline segment where Blatz was pretty frustrated because the boys are getting in the way, so instead of no get out, the Squiggoth's going to just carve straight through his own guys if he has to, but chose to say, look, we need some heavier firepower up here, so they assembled his trademark outhouse and ventured in there. So who knows what's going to come firing out of that cannon in a future turn. So we also had Colossal Squig and Squiglets basically try and get into close combat with the tech priests up there, but they couldn't make it. Our Hive Crone flew and vomited some sort of acid on the Imperial Knight, but no kill there for the Hive Crone. Then we had a huge big pile of Gene Stealers just come surging forth out of that cavity there, so that's going to give these guys some work to do, to carve through a whole bunch of Gene Stealers as they emerge. We had a deep striking Hive Tyrant with wings come on the edge of the board here. Could have came over the back over there, but all they'll do is just turn around and just mince him more by himself, so I just thought he'd just jump in line here. Our Hydor hasn't been able to get a shot off really this battle yet because there's just too much in the way, but that will get to do some activity in a future turn. Our Hierophant took out the Baneblade here with the assistance of the Squiggoth cannon. Cannon that's on the Squiggoth. And so that's another super heavy gone. So those super heavies are dropping quite a lot. This one's looking in a bit of trouble over here, unless they can do something about those Carnifexes. But they do have their shining spear here ready to take out someone, namely the Hierophant. If they could do that, it could be game on. Anyway, that's it. We've got an awful lot to come out for the Legion of the Damned. We've got a squad there, another squad down here. We've got a squad there, and we've got a whole bucket load of Terminators and things like that. A Dreadnought and another tank over here yet. So looks pretty solid for the Tyranids and Orks, but you never know. We'll have to wait and see. Turn 4 coming up shortly. My gosh, end of turn 4. First half of turn 4. That was a huge effort. It's taken a long time to do this stop motion segment. Where do I start? Maybe over this side of the board. We had some deep striking Terminators and a Dreadnought walk onto the board, as well as a Rhino. Now the Terminators went and shot up the group of Tyranid warriors there, taking out a few. this Rhino full of Space Marines. Tried to have a shot at the Hive Tyrant there, just a bit of a token effort. Didn't really do a good job. Over this side of the board we had more Terminators materialise at this elevated position and fire down on those surging Gene Stealers. Now a whole chunk of those got taken out, but we won't know until next turn to see how that group has diminished. Over this side of the board, let's start with this. The Ululator finally broke through and took out the Hierophant. I've just sort of jacked it up with a skull there, just to show that it's dead, because I really don't want to put him on his side, because, you know, he'll probably break or something. Anyway, we had a couple of Rhinos. This one here just come round and take a defensive position in front of the Ululator, just as a bit of mobile cover there, just in case he wants to try and have a go at it. Tech Priests over the side there, shot up the Squigs, made the Colossal Squig angry. We've got the Knight here, Imperial Knight, take out the flying Tyranid, the Hive Crone. All these other units up the back here just basically meandered in behind the armour, ready to jump out, take a position. Our big tank over here just withdrew and vaporised a single Carnifex, but it's still pretty exposed on the front. This las cannon here, this unit here, shot up the Zoanthrope, who didn't do anything at all really. We had this skimmer land speeder come up, take a position just between that tree and that rock there, and shoot its old one eye there, try to take him out, but obviously it's going to take a bit more than that. These Terminators with storm shields basically took a position right in front of this Ululator, because the old one eye was sort of eyeing it off a little bit. Anyway, just going to try and charge in there, but they'll take a position there just defending it, and hopefully be a bit of a deterrent for that Tyranid creature. So I think that's really about it. It's an awful lot in first half of turn 4. We'll see what the Tyranids can do and the Orks can do in response. Okay, so here we are at the end of turn 4, and it's all happening now. We've had our final item or unit for the Orks and Tyranids come on, the Gargant. That came on late in the turn. What we had here is, excuse me, got the hiccups. We've got the Tyranids assaulted the Terminators up there, taking out quite a few, 3 in fact, and lost quite a few themselves. That will keep it continuing. We had the Hive Tyrant and Tyranid Warriors assault the Terminators over here, taking out 2 from each side. Hive Tyrant or Swarm Lord assaulted the Rhino, didn't explode it, that's ongoing. Over this side, Carnifex chose to take on the Predator, taking that out, leaving the big tank there with so many options to pick from. But anyway, we'll leave that till next turn. Hierodule came up here and popped open the Rhino, which was then fired up and assaulted by the Squiggoth, taking out that entire unit. Colossal Squig over there took out 3 Tech Priests and will cause some damage over that side. Those Orks up there just took a position up on that little bridge area. Not doing much this turn. And that's about it really. Everything else just moved into place. And getting ready for some, I know we had, last thing was the old one I took out, the land speeder there. It was just close and was probably going to get hurt by those guys, but what do you do? First target right in front of you, try and chew it, don't you? Anyway, that's it. That's the end of turn 4. More bloodshed to come in turn 5. Here we are at the end of the first half of turn 5 in an extended battle, which should go for 8 turns. There's still an awful lot on the board at this stage. We're only really halfway through. It was the Legion of the Damned turn, and let's see how they fared. We had some deep striking HQ units for them coming up on this little rocky elevated section there, and the only spot they could really sit is just here. They touched down there and then fired into some Orks, which are ranged weaponry. They tried to stay there to try and fire upon what was the tech priest down there, but they got 2 casualties there, and it's looking pretty bleak, especially now this is reinforced by the Imperial Knight. That Knight came in and ended up taking out the Colossal Squig with only one loss of 1 tech priest there. So there's not a lot of places for these guys to go. There's this massive melee going on over here between a group of Terminators. There's 1, 2, 4 remaining now, and it's just a huge big tide of Gene Stealers. They've carved a whole heap of Gene Stealers away, but that is fairly evenly matched over that side. 4 remaining Terminators and about 20 Gene Stealers maybe. Don't know. Have to wait and see when I clear it out how many are left. Over this side we had the tank, which was in combat with the Carnifex over here. Not combat, but it was being assaulted. This front track has been hammered so many times, just had to withdraw. Basically wheeled back and came across this way to come behind the ululator, because that is going to be the main weaponry to try and carve through these big units coming through the middle here. The big 3, the Squiggoth, the Horridor, and obviously the Gargant at the back. So they're going to need all this and more probably to take them out. So the tank withdrew from this section, opening it up for fire from this tactical unit here and a few HQ units over here. There's a Centurious just there for the Legion of the Damned. We've got like a chaplain with a jump pack essentially there, and there was a Terminator leader there, but that was taken out, and the 1 Carnifex taken out as well. So they've kind of stabilised this side, but there's obviously this Dimericron here, which is very dangerous and very close to everyone else, so it'll want to try and get into combat with these again and take them out. In the middle we had a sort of like a veteran squad for Legion of the Damned. They had nowhere to go. They just basically came running up here in amongst the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield Terminators, who took on old One Eye there, and those Thunderhammers doing the trick, taking it out. Moving over this side, we had a Rhino which was assaulted by the Swarm Lord, I should say. It just basically wheeled back and dumped its load out the back here, and which reinforced this combat here with the Terminators and the Dreadnought. 3 warriors going down and 2 Terminators, so that will continue, and I'll imagine if this Swarm Lord gets through that Rhino and reinforces that, it'll be game on over here with a couple of Hive Tyrants essentially going against a Dreadnought and Space Marines. So that's about it for turn 5, the first half of turn 5. There's not a lot more in Deep Strike. We've got 1 unit of Terminators for Thunderhammers who haven't come out yet, and that is the contents of 1 tank, and it's the contents of another Rhino. So there's 2 Rhinos left. They're sitting in the middle here. They came through as cover again. The first one was vaporised, but just trying to protect the ululator here, so I could just sit there and vaporise. No doubt the Squiggoth's going to have enough of that and take care of all that. You also got the Horridor, who's no slouch in combat either, so they'll come in and clean up that no doubt next turn. And then hopefully for the Legion of the Damned, the ululator can take out the Squiggoth maybe, but it's going to need to, because this thing up the back here, if it gets into close combat with that nasty big power fist the size of it, huge big chainsword on the other side, it's just going to carve these things up if it gets in close combat. But we'll see how it goes. We're at the end of the first half of turn 5. We'll see what happens next. Welcome to the last part of turn 5, the Orks and the Tyranids. Well, right in the middle of the board here, the heavy gargantuan creatures have breach the lines of the Mechanicus and the Legion of the Damned. We'll get to that in a minute. Firstly, let's start at the back here. Seems a bit easier. So we had this ongoing melee with some Terminators. This guy here and that guy there, there's 4 of them. 2 of them are down and 4 Gene Stealers are down. There's still a few more Gene Stealers left, but only 2 more Terminators. But there's a whole stack left over there for future reinforcement. In here we had the Orks assault the Tech Priests and really carve them up, leaving only Yars there in defence. So they did a good job, only losing 1 Ork in the attack. The Gargant moved along this way and fired upon the Ululator there. I'm not killing it, but it's still heavily damaged. I don't think there's much on the board now that isn't heavily damaged. We had the Gargantuan Squiggoth assault the Rhinos there, popping them open, and out came all the Legion of the Damned. The Horridor followed up, and about 6 guys got taken out. They really haven't got much chance against those guys charging through. There was a bunch of Orks over this way. They couldn't make it into melee combat with the Terminators, so they just stopped there, fired upon 1 Terminator. It wasn't killed, it was killed by the Exocrine back here with some fire. So 1 Terminator there. They've got shields, so they're going to be harder to kill. But they probably won't want to get in combat with all those Orks because there's just so many dice rolls. They'll eventually find a way through their defences. Over this side we had the Hive Tyrant with wings, was up in the middle there. Thought it would come this way, which really kind of rules out a recovery for the Legion of the Damned here. Even though there is a Dreadnought, we've got 3 Hive Tyrants will have, 1 remaining warrior. In that combat 2 warriors went down, 1 Terminator and 2 just normal Marines. But in that melee we've got 3 Hive Tyrants, a lot of bone swords slashing about. If that Dreadnought goes down, she's all over in that area. Anyway, over here we had the Carnifex in combat with Centurious and another jump pack chaplain type character just there. No surprise there, just the heavy power of the Carnifex just overpowered the Marines there. The Dimericron and the it's got a honour guard with it essentially, not honour but just a guard anyway. Basically came surging over this Tyranid section here and into this unit here. We took out 5 Marines on the assault and losing 1 guard in return. So that's really all it is for turn 5. It really comes down to, I think, who can hold up in the middle here. We've got the Ululator there, point blank into the Squiggoth there, which is on its last legs. That's surely got to go down. And if this other vehicle back here can get into some sort of range on the Gargant, we can take one of these, a few of these monstrous ones, one of the big 3 there, then tide could turn. Anyway, this does go for 8 turns, and that is the end of turn 5. Okay, here we are at the end of the first half of turn 6, and as you can see there's still an awful lot left on the board with turns 7 and 8 yet to come. Let's start up the back here. We've got the Legion of the Damned Terminators, which were sitting over the other side of this mound here, just reinforced their other unit that they had, completely pulverising the Gene Stealers there on this side with all those power fists. So moving back over this side of the board, we've got a unit of Marines here with a Dreadnought still duking it out with the Hive Tyrant and the Warrior. The Warrior went down and 1 Marine, but it's looking pretty bleak with a couple of Hive Tyrants lurking in the area. Over this side we had a deep striking Thunderhammer unit of Terminators just touched down here, ready to either go this way or head over that way. We also had the other unit of Terminators assault the Horridor just there. causing some good damage there with those thunderhammers, but losing one in return. There's a small group of veterans just here. Took out a couple of orcs from this mob, but they're in strife, but probably their bait, maybe, perhaps. See how it goes. Over this side we had a unit of close combat marines here. They didn't really want to get into combat with this because the big tank basically pulverised all the guards around it and injured the Dimericon. So that is in play still. There was a unit that was in hand-to-hand combat which fled, allowing that to happen. Likewise, this unit here was in combat with the gargantuan squiggoth. That's actually dead, that squiggoth. It's been pulverised, but it's just, I can't put it on its side because it'll break the tusks. It's a bit damaging, so I'll have to just remove that manually. That was part of a bit of a storyline element where we had a outhouse that Blatz was using just up here, and it got exploded and landed in the mouth of the Gargant behind, causing some wounds for the Gargant in that process. So the squiggoth is down, but the occupants are still going to be around for next turn. We had the Imperial Knight at the back there in combat with some orcs, taking out two. Yars ran away, fled up to that portal just up there, but that's about it. Everything else seems to be clear on the board, so I'll clear off these casualties, including the squiggoth, and then the Orks and Tyranids will have their turn 6. Okay, second half of turn 6 coming up shortly. Well, here we are halfway between first half of turn 6 and second half of turn 6, and after 6 years of hard labour, we've finally had my Canon 80D bite the bullet. This is a rest in peace for this camera. It's a busted shutter, and it's been many years that I've spent with this camera, and it's done a good job, but right when I'm about to finish everything up, it bites the bullet. So I'll have to choose some other different camera setup just to finish this season off, and hopefully it doesn't look too dodgy. But if there's any problems with this, with the pictures, that's the reason why. Rest in peace, Canon 80D. Thanks for your service. Alright, we'll get back into second half of turn 6 as soon as I work out another camera solution. Cheers. Okay, here we are at the end of the second half of turn 6, and I've been using my Canon G16 instead of my Canon 80D since it flamed out at the start of this turn, and hopefully, I haven't done any editing yet, hopefully it's going to work out alright. Anyway, you're not really concerned about my camera issues, you're concerned about who's winning this battle. Now we had the Carnifex over here chased down the fleeing, well, they just withdrew from combat, so they just basically got vaporised by the charging Carnifex. Dimericon chose to charge the group of Marines here rather than take on the big tank here, because it probably had a few too many wounds left and would have got vaporised, so I thought it might take a few casualties over here first, which did a pretty good job of it. The big Gargant vaporised the Alveolator finally, took quite a few blows, but those things are pretty tough, so that's a big blow for the Mechanicus side because they need some heavy firepower to bring down this brute. Anyway, in the Horridal in the middle, a combat was ongoing and two Terminators got taken out, and that is still wounded, but looking pretty dangerous in the middle there. The Orks here charged the veterans, took them out. There's just too many dice being rolled and not enough numbers on the Space Marine side. Blatz and co basically were over there. They just snuck through this little gap here and just hid here as part of the storyline element. They're not really going to do much. They might join up with this group, but they're not really rolling any dice, and they're just part of the mob in this case. so they don't really count for numbers as such. Over here there is a combat with 3 Hive Tyrants and the group of Marines in the Dreadnought, and we've got 1 Hive Tyrant down and 3 Marines, so we'll see how that goes. Our mind controlling Ork, who's controlling the Tyranid brood, came down from here and is basically going to be part of this battle just the last few turns, so they'll try and group up with these guys or somehow get into that. We'll have to wait and see. Up here there was an ongoing combat with the Terminators and the Tyranids Genestealers. Genestealers are completely wiped out at this stage. Warboss and Pain Boy and Mech Boy basically were in combat up that way. They said had enough of this, I'm out of there, and fled this way. I suppose that leaves the Imperial Knight up there to do some damage. Hopefully gets the Gargant perhaps. So that is about it. Oh, we also had the Exocrine here move around and try and fire on these Terminators with storm shields, and didn't take anybody out, and is in a hugely vulnerable position there for assault. So that is about it for the end of turn 6. Normally that would be the end of the battle, but we've got 2 more turns, 7 and 8, and there's still quite a lot on the board to resolve the battle, so we'll see how it goes. First half of turn 7 coming up shortly. Here we are at the end of the first half of turn 7, only a few turns to go now. The Space Marines Legion of the Damned have had their turn, and I think they might have made a critical mistake in this turn, which might turn the tide of the battle. Let's start over this side first. We had a melee going on between a couple of Hive Tyrants, Dreadnought and Space Marines. They all took wounds, but 2 Space Marines went down, so that is fairly evenly balanced, and we'll just move on to something else. We had our Terminator HQ unit jump down from off this tiered ledge here, and just shoot down the fleeing Orks. We had the Imperial Knight charge the Gargant, somewhat foolishly I guess. It managed to inflict some pretty good damage on the Gargant, but almost absolutely on its last legs, the Imperial Knight now. So it's just going to be, the Gargant's just going to blow on it and over it will go. So over this side we've got this last remaining unit from, there were some Thunderhammer Terminators there fighting the Horridor. This guy was just fighting there by himself. He said, bugger this, I'm out of here. So he just fled near these trees here. Over here there's a stack of Marines piled into this Dimericron, and 4 got taken out, but the creature is somewhat wounded. Over this side, this is where the mistake, I believe, occurred. We had the Thunderhammer Terminators here, and had a choice really to charge into those Orks or take on the Exocrine, and they chose obviously the Exocrine, which is somewhat easy to kill with those Thunderhammers, but really what it does is opens up the Orks to charge in with all those dice from them charging, even with those shields. That's the way to beat the storm shields, is by sheer number of dice, and they should have charged in here, probably taken out half of them, getting the jump on them, and then they would have stood a chance and just basically duked it out with them. But now they've exposed themselves to an assault from the flank, so bad move. But anyway, that's what happens. Over this side we had the big tank wheel around here and fire on the Horridor. Now it was cleared up from the fleeing Marine just there, and that's heavily wounded as well. So a lot of these super heavies are on their last legs. Gargant's probably in the best condition, but still that is fairly wounded as well. But as they should be, it's almost the end of the battle, so there should be quite a few wounded units. Anyway, that is the end of the first half of turn 7. Here we are at the end of the last half of turn 7, only one more turn to go. It's been pretty bleak for the Legion of the Damned this turn. Over this side of the board we had a melee between Hive Tyrants and Dreadnoughts, we saw 2 Marines go down, and the Hive Tyrant with wings went down as well, leaving a fairly injured Dreadnought and the Swarm Lord just there, and we have a character within melee range on that side, so it's looking pretty bleak for that Dreadnought. But anyway, our Orks no doubt charged the Terminators and only took out 2 with all those attacks, and they lost 4 in return. Those nasty Thunderhammers doing something good in response. Our Gargant slayed the Imperial Knight, not before it took some nasty wounds. It's really right down and low at this stage, the Gargant, so the Imperial Knight did its job, I suppose, and delayed it and injured it quite substantially. Our Horridor charged the last remaining tank for the Mechanicus and took that out, so that's not so good. They're hoping to get one last shot at the Gargant with that giant cannon. We had a melee going over here between a whole swag of Legion of the Damned and the Dimericron. 2 Marines go down and the Dimericron got taken out. So a bit of a win there for the Marines, but you know, some of their super heavies are gone. The only thing that's probably a last ditch effort in the last turn is there's a whole swag of Terminators there with their power fists charging a Gargant, seeing if they can take it down in the last turn. It'll be a close one. And these battles over here will still rage on into the last turn. We'll see how that rolls out. So there we have it, that is turn 7, 1 more turn to go. Well, here we are, turn 8, first half of turn 8, the last roll of the dice for the Legion of the Damned. They did a pretty good job, in fact. We had our group of Terminators and HQ units, everyone was piled up on that little mound there, charged down here against the wounded Gargant and managed to take it out on the attack, so the Gargant didn't get to slice back with that nasty big chainsaw over there. So good job there for the Legion of the Damned. Over this side, this group here was just here. They had a choice to go after the Horridor, which is pretty strong at this stage, hasn't had too many wounds, and came after the Carnifex, which was wounded as well, but they managed to take it out in the end before it could respond. Over this side we had our hero for the Legion of the Damned here, was fled from combat in the previous turn, hiding behind that tree there, came in here and reinforced this combat with the Thunderhammer Terminators and absolutely carved up the Orks. 5 casualties there, only 1 Terminator there, so they took a fairly big blow. That used to be a huge group of Orks there. It's been whittled down quite a lot. They got a bad roll from when they charged in with all those numbers. They should have taken out more of these Terminators here, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Anyway, over this side we've got the Swarm Lord and the Dreadnought still going toe to toe. They don't know how that's going to end, fairly evenly weighted at this stage. Well, there we have it, Gargant's down. Tyranids and Orks have one last turn left to try and turn the tide, and we'll see who wins the battle. Okay, last turn coming up shortly. Okay, so that is the end of the second half of turn 8 and the end of our battle. We had a few little twists in this last turn. We'll start over this side of the board. We had our mind controlling Ork riding the Broodlord charge in and reinforce the Swarm Lord there. Ended up taking out the Dreadnought finally. So the Tyranids control that side of the board. There was nothing back up this side because it was the Tyranid and Ork turn. And over here the Horridor basically charged into the Legion of the Damned squad there, and there were 4 casualties there. So probably the big move for the game, it came right down to the last turn. The Ork group here, led by Snickrot, was in combat with these Terminators with Thunderhammers, and he fled. And he just fled out through that way, broken. So it ends up, if they just stayed there, they would have probably won the battle, but they just couldn't hold their bottle, and that's probably a a symbol of the Orks. A lot of potential, but just failing to deliver. But that's what happened. They fled, and which ended up this unit, staying intact and counting towards the victory points at the end of the game. So at the end of the day, the Space Marines ended up winning, which is a bit of a surprise because we've still got the Horridor still sitting on the board, but the Orks had the chance of clinching the victory, but chose to turn tail and run. Anyway, so I've got the storyline element there, which I had Blatt sitting in here. The theory is we've got this little outhouse here that's been in a few of my videos, so they all piled into that, and I'm going to try and turn it into some TARDIS-like thing where they basically head off into the nether realms and are not seen from again, but they'll resurface no doubt sometime in the future, but probably not in my videos because that's probably the last time the Orks are going to get a run at this stage. But anyway, moving over this side of the board, we've had just a bit of a storyline element here where our elder Guardians of Mysteria are still trying to resurrect their fallen titan here, which is buried beneath this. This is going to lead into our next battle. We've got Yars over here as well, who's made an appearance here within, I think it was season 5. So he's come back to oversee the forces of good, I suppose, to battle the forces of chaos. So they're going to try and resurrect this titan. This is the next battle, so I suppose there's a few spoilers here. The next battle will occur essentially on this board. It's still in the webway, but we're going to have, now I can't remember the term for it. The idea is that the Eternity Gate or Infinity Gate, I can't remember, but for those who follow the lore, basically when the Emperor was doing his thing on Terra, fighting off the rebellion, there was another battle going on in the webway through I think it's the Eternity Gate. So I'm going to set up the Eternity Gate somewhere in here and have some custodians maybe sitting, guarding just the gate. Not too many of them though, because it's kind of leading into the next battle. Gee, I'm handing out spoilers today. Anyway, so they'll be guarding that. There's going to be a huge tide of chaos just walking this way, just coming through, assaulting this gate. They're getting overrun. So at that stage, these guys over here are going to reactivate the Star of Mysteria, big giant titan. Going to come out, and that's my painting project for I think last year. I haven't filtered them yet, but there's I spent a long time painting Eldar, so there's going to be a large Eldar force led by the Star of Mysteria there to try and ambush and flank the forces of chaos that are going to try and surge through that Eternity Gate. Sounds good. Hopefully it comes out as like I think, but it should be nice, and that should lead in nicely to our grand final. But anyway, that is the last part of turn 8 for our battle 19 part 1. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.